Hey YouTube, welcome back to Luke's Amateur Hour. Today we got a Luke Learns for you. I wanted to go through my understanding of electricity and the aspects of electricity. And I've always had trouble for some reason working out what terms mean what and all that other jazz. It's not really complicated concepts. Honestly, they're really not complicated, but they're just something that I've had trouble wrapping my mind around, and I'm guessing I'm not the only one. I'm not an electrician. I've done some wiring at the house. I've fixed lights, installed switches, run new circuits, and that kind of stuff. And I've done it successfully. I've sized everything correctly, but I always like to know what it is that I'm dealing with. And with electricity, the more I know about it, the more I've learned to respect it and be incredibly careful about it. So I'm hoping that I can pass that along to you guys. But I get wrapped around the axle when it comes to volts, amps, ohms, watts, all the different terminology. And I came up with an analogy that works for me, and I think it might work for some of you guys as well. So if you do some Googling around, you get, the basic terminology. We'll start with the basic terminology. There's a couple different measurements of electricity, right? You got volts and amps are the two that come right off the top of the head, and then ohms, and then you'll see on light bulbs watts and other stuff like that. You'll see watts. You'll see all of this stuff. So volts is voltage, right? And amps is amperage, and ohms is resistance. Okay, so we've got voltage and amperage and resistance, and these three things go together in a formula, and I forget what the formula actually is called. It's Ohm's law, I think it is. And these are represented by a V and I, and I'm not sure why it's an I, not an A, and a lowercase r. We'll hold off on watts for right now, but you have I equals V over R. So they're all related. And in my head, I've always had trouble understanding how best they're related, and how, like, if the voltage and the resistance is the same, if you change the amperage, how that's going to impact things, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go through it really quick for you guys, and I'm going to show you my analogy. If you Google it, the top results will be around, let me make sure I'm zoomed in or focused accurately here. The top results will be around comparing electricity to plumbing and how water flows through pipe systems. And it just never worked in my brain. Just could never make that work, because plumbing to me is also kind of one of those things where I can do it, I can make it work, but flow rates and no thanks. So my analogy is using a bullet, right? So if we have a bullet shot from a gun, we got our gun over here, and we've got our bullet, right? Great pictures. The bullet comes out. Volts is going to be the speed of the bullet. Speed is volts. And amps is going to be the size of the bullet, whether it's 100 grain, 150 grain, 50 grain bullet. And your resistance is going to be the wind and gravity, whatever, but it's the wind. So these things are all related, and if you know anything about shooting, you know that you can speed up a bullet using more gunpowder, or you can slow down a bullet using the same amount of gunpowder but using a larger bullet, right? It makes a little bit more sense. So if you think of voltage as just the speed of electricity, amperage as just the size of the amount, or the amount of electricity you're getting at any one time, And resistance, ohms, as the thing that slows your electricity, it's the wire, it just kind of clicked for me. And then watts, I always had trouble, like, what the hell is watts then? Well, watts is power, and it's just P. Watts is how much power is delivered or used. A lot of light bulbs go by used watts. So, okay, so how does watts fall into the bullet thing? I just look at it as force. Force is power, right? And you know that force in physics and all that stuff is speed times mass. Speed times mass is, you know, your force. And so if you need to deliver 100 foot-pounds of, or 100 inch-pound, whatever. So if you're shooting, I'm not going to get into examples because I don't want to actually do math here. But you do velocity times amperage, speed times size, so velocity times amperage, you're going to get your power. That's it. So in order to deliver more power to a target using a bullet, you can shoot the same bullet faster, or at the same speed, send a larger bullet. And that just makes sense. Now, you also have to consider that sending a larger bullet is going to give you more resistance, right? Because it's more mass moving through the air. And so you have to account for that somehow. Either you lower the resistance or you increase the speed to still deliver the same amount of power at the end. So I look at watts as your stopping power, your kinetic energy, how much bang ends up at the target once the bullet lands, right? And so your power panel at your house, to bring it back to electricity, your power panel is the gun. And your air that the bullet goes through is the wiring. Hopefully just the wiring, not your body, right? Your speed, everything comes out in the US at about 110 volts, unless you change the circuit and you make it 220, right? You put more speed out. Your amps, your outlets and stuff can deliver 15 amps. So that's the size of the bullet that's coming out of the outlet. And how much gets used is defined by the watts. How much power is needed in order to run whatever it is you're plugging in is defined by watts. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. It makes sense in my head. Look, if you're an electrician, you're probably laughing your ass off at this point. This is ridiculous. But to me, it makes sense, right? You can deliver the same amount of power by adjusting. If you drop the voltage, you can increase the amperage, or if you increase the voltage, you can decrease the amperage, and you still get the same amount of power, right? And then your resistance, it just clicks. It makes sense in my brain, because I grew up shooting. I've reloaded ammunition. I go hunting not frequently, but I hunt. So I wanted to point this out. Hopefully this will help one of you guys. Hopefully it makes one of your lives a little bit easier in just wrapping your head around electricity. I know it works for me. I still use it. I still think about it all the time, and it's just kind of stuck in my head, and it just works. The plumbing analogy doesn't work for me. I don't understand it nearly as well as I understand this. I haven't seen this analogy on the internet, so I'm putting it out there. I'm hoping it's useful. If it's useful, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you have a better analogy, I want to hear it. Throw it down in the comments. Tell me what your analogy is. I will happily wrap my brain around that, and I'll post another video explaining it if I can. Because, hey, look, while this is my idea, it may not be the best in the world. If you like what I'm doing, you like this series or whatever, check out my other videos. Go ahead and subscribe. Otherwise, I hope this helps you out. Right? It's not going to help you actually wire your house, but maybe it'll help you wrap your head around why you need certain size wires to run certain size appliances and outlets and stuff. So, hey, thanks for tuning in, you guys. My name's Luke. I'm an amateur, if you couldn't tell. This one didn't take me an hour. Have a good evening.